Summer is in full swing here in Summit County, and we're more than halfway through 2024. What's the local real estate market up to lately? Well, inventory is up. We're seeing tons of new listings every day, and certain segments of the market are selling fast. At what price point and what property type are things moving the fastest? Well, that's just one of the items we're going to cover in this video. Hi, it's Pete Deininger with the Breck Life Group right here in Breckenridge, and in this video I'm going to take a look at a couple of key takeaways in our real estate market, and we're going to look at it from two different angles because we're always looking for potential shifts in the market. We'll look at the first half of the year through June this year compared to last year, and then we're also going to dissect that down to just Q2, or the second quarter of this year compared to last year. So we'll take a look at sales, we'll look at inventory, and of course we're going to talk prices. Now, if you've seen any of our previous videos, you know I've mentioned that we are getting a ton of people reaching out with questions. Just the other day, we had a couple reach out to us and they said, we've watched all of your videos. We love how you're delivering valuable content about the local Summit County real estate market, but we've got some specific questions. So we scheduled a Zoom with them and ended up spending an hour with them answering all kinds of questions that enabled them to make the decision to come and meet with us next month. So if you've got questions, send a call, give us a call, send a text, whatever the case. We love to help answer questions for you. Let's get this video started. All right, my first key takeaway, we're going to take a look at the number of sales or number of closed transactions that have taken place. We're going to take a look at this from several different angles. Let's start with all of Summit County, all property types, and we'll look at the first half of the year, January through June. We saw a 1% increase in the total number of closed transactions. So that's essentially unchanged. When we divide that down to just looking at the second quarter this year compared to the second quarter last year, we saw an actual 3% decrease in the number of sales. So maybe that's a sign that the second quarter, we've seen trends of a cooling market in the second quarter compared to the first quarter. But essentially through the first half of the year, the broader market around Summit County, all property types, essentially unchanged. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the video, we're always looking for segments of the market that are overperforming or underperforming the rest of the market. So let's look at Breckenridge. All property types in the first half of the year, we actually saw a 14% increase in the number of closed sales. And when we take a look at that smaller segment, just the second quarter of this year compared to Q2 last year, 6% increase. So whether we're looking at the first half of the year or just Q2, Breckenridge all property types outperformed the other areas around the county. So in either case, whether we look at all of Summit County or whether we look at Breckenridge specifically, you can see that Q2 did not perform as well as the first half of the year, and that's because in the first quarter of this year, we saw a declining in the average interest rate, mortgage interest rate. And so we saw a lot of buyers returning to the market in the first quarter, and then in the second quarter we noticed that rates were floating back up, hitting the sevens, and we saw another cooling as buyers thought their money wasn't going to bring them as much purchasing power. So thankfully, we have heard recently the Fed is indicating or signaling a likely interest rate reduction in the third quarter or early fourth quarter of this year. And so that will be important to watch because we've seen as rates floated up, buyers' demand cooled, and as rates begin to float back down, more buyers return to the market. Next up, we're going to take a look at a couple of factors on the supply side of the equation. We're going to look at inventory or new listings, and we're going to look at price reduction. So first, let's take a look at inventory this year compared to last year. And again, we're going to look at this as the first half of the year, and we're going to look at it in just the second quarter. So around Summit County, all property types, we saw 33% more new listings in the first half of the year than we did last year. And when we only look at Q2, we saw 34% more new listings this year than we did in that same time frame last year. So when you think about more inventory, but the number of transactions staying about the same, as we discussed in my first key takeaway, it might lead to some frustrated sellers that they've got more competition for their property, but we aren't seeing an increase in the number of sales. And so when we see more inventory but no change in the number of sales, those frustrated sellers really just have one lever that they can pull. If we're not getting the appropriate number of showings or what we had hoped, it's typically either condition or price. And most frequently, if you've made improvements to your home to make sure that it's show ready, it's most often price. So to that end, when we look at the number of price reductions that we saw this year, first half of the year compared to last year, 57% more price reductions this year than we saw last year in the first half of the year. When we break that down to just Q2, 48% more price reductions this year than sellers had to make last year. So it's no surprise that with number of sales holding steady, more inventory, and more price reductions, that we also saw average days on market, or the time that it takes for a seller to sell their property, to rise significantly as well. And in my third key takeaway, what's the question that everyone always asks? What are prices doing? So again, we're going to look at this in the broader Summit County aspect, and we're going to look narrowed down to just Breckenridge. So all property types around the full Summit County, we saw an increase by 10% in the first half of the year for all property types. So pretty surprising, a 10% increase in the median sales price this year compared to last year. And when we only look at Q2 this year compared to last year, a 5% increase in the median sales price. Now, when we look at Breckenridge specifically, and this is all property types, so single family homes, condos, and townhomes, we saw first half of the year a 19% increase in the median sales price. And when we just look at Q2, 15% higher median sales price this year than compared to last year. So while prices do continue to rise around Summit County, we're seeing a couple of indicators of a cooling real estate market. More inventory, up significantly this year compared to last year. More price reductions this year compared to last year, and longer average days on market this year compared to last year. So a couple of ways to look at that. If you're a buyer, you've now at least got a wider selection. You don't have to see a property on day one that it hits the market and know that you're going to be in a competing offer situation against 1, 3, or 5 other buyers. You've got the luxury of a little bit of time to make sure it's just the right property for you. And if you're a seller, it's more important than ever to first make sure your home is in fantastic show-ready condition on day one when we hit the market. And it's also more important than ever to price appropriately for a fast sale. Otherwise, as we've seen with days on market, we don't want you to be facing 90, 180 days on market. So a lot to consider. If you've got questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will sit down, we'll schedule a Zoom call with you, we'll look at the data, we'll look at the neighborhoods, everything specific to your property or what you hope to buy. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.